Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello and welcome to DC Trainings. I had a technical subluxation glitch there. Sorry about that, but welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer. It's a great day today to talk about future health projections. And with this topic, this is really, it's a short topic in the sense of the overall report of findings process, but it's a powerful topic. And the reason why this is such a powerful topic is because it's a transition point. It's a point from going into the patient's findings and showing them the results of their initial examination, and transitioning into prioritizing the solution to their condition or to the situation. So really important topic. I know it's a little bit shorter than some of our other topics, but in no way does it have less importance. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in to this process or this section. And let me just share my screen with you so we can get right down to it. And as you can see on your screen, we are moving right along through module 3, right? We started with prepare for the report of findings. We then moved into greeting the patient and the spouse, which I just had a meeting on this yesterday in my office. It was a great meeting with my team. So anyways, just a really great part of the sequence. And then we moved into the CA delivering the report of findings, which I know for many of you, that's an essential tool that you have because, let me move this toolbar over, because you have your team participating in the report of findings. So it's a really important part of the tool or part of the process. And it's a valuable part of maintaining a successful practice. Sorry, I'm trying to find, oh, here we go. Okay, that's why. It's a valuable part of maintaining a successful practice when you have your team participating in all these different steps and really sharing the workload across multiple people so that you can have a fully functioning, successful practice. From there, we moved into last week's topic, which was the review of the subluxations. This was where we really show the patient their subluxations. We really let them create ownership about their condition by seeing exactly what's going on and what's the cause behind these health problems. As one of my favorite all-time chiropractors once said, and I'm going to expand my screen for this one because he really was a powerful speaker, and his name was Dr. Fred Barge. Many of you know who he was, or maybe you saw him in person. I had the chance to meet with him several times. But he has a great book that says, "Are you the doctor, doctor?" And in that book, he talks about the importance of really connecting a person with their condition. There's a quote that he shared with me years ago. It's by another famous individual. You may have heard of him. His name was Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud's quote was, "People will do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure." Now that really sets the stage for our topic today. People will do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. Now I'm bringing that up because in the future health projections, which is our topic today, that's going to be really the main thrust behind this section. And it's really letting people know, well, I'll get into it with our topic. So I don't want to give away the whole thing yet. I want to share it with you as we go through the topic. So the anyway, so we're going to get into that. We talked about that in our previous week. We went into reviewing the subluxations, as you see on your screen, and then today we'll move into the future health projections. Now, before I jump into that topic, I want to just let you know as well and remind you that on July 15th, which is next month, actually 1 month from today, we will be having our next seminar, which that will be the topic of that seminar is financial arrangements. In the financial arrangements seminar, we'll lay out how to really set up the financial arrangements behind any care plan, whether it's a cash plan, no third-party pay, whether there's a third-party pay like a med pay or a personal injury, or whether it's a insurance plan or a Medicare plan or even Medi-Cal plan or Medicaid. We'll talk about all of those in that upcoming seminar, Financial Arrangements, on July 15th. And as a bonus, that seminar will be live in my office. I know many of you come to DC trainings for the materials and the content, which I love working with all of you on that to maintain your practices. But I know there's also many of you that like the camaraderie that we have with DC trainings. I really feel like we have a special group of doctors with DC trainings that collectively stand for the principles that were put forth by our founders, Doctors B.J. and D.D. Palmer. And what I mean by that is just a love for what you do, a love for serving the public, a love for continuing the profession, and the discipline to put in place the principles of practice that would make our founders proud. And that's just what like I said, I feel like we have that with DC trainings. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what we stand for and what we do together. So really want to say thank you. So it's a great time to get together collectively as a group with all of our members on July 15th. That'll be at my office at 700 River Street in Santa Cruz. Great time to come together, great time to learn, great time to grow your practice and to stand together with our principles. So looking forward to seeing all of you there for that meeting. All right, now moving into the future health projections, as I said, we left off with reviewing the subluxations. And I was talking about how this is kind of a short segment here, but it's very impactful and powerful. And the reason why it is because, and I'll just frame this for a moment with my hands, because what this is you're going from saying, okay, here's what subluxations do in general. Here's what the subluxations are doing in your spine. In other words, here's what your condition is doing to you. This is where people will do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. So they're actually, by getting this information, there's a level of ownership around being responsible with a proactive solution that's taking shape in their mind. So we showed them their subluxations, and now we're going to project into the future and let them know, here's what would happen. Actually, we're not even going to let them know. We're going to ask them, based on what you've experienced, how do you think this is going to affect you in the future? Now, the reason why I jumped off the share, I'm going to jump back on right now, is because I want you to visualize what I'm about to show you on a chart that I have on my wall. And I'm going to use my mouse to delineate specific markers on this poster. And if you don't have this poster, I would recommend getting it. You can buy them from, I think it's from Parker College or from Share. You can go online and look up Share chiropractic products. But wherever you can, find a copy of this poster. There's so much, as they say, buckshot to what's on this poster that I think it's one of those essential tools. I use it literally every day in my practice, and I've been in practice for 26 years. So it's something that is sort of timeless. Okay, now enough of me emphasizing that. I want to just show you how this poster works. And you can see I'm going through, I have a picture here. I'm delivering a report of findings to a hypothetical patient who is actually my CA, Carla. But on the wall, and there's a little bit of glare on it, but I'm going to use my mouse, as I said, because this poster is the one I'm referring to. We just left off on going over the x-rays or whatever exam findings you want to show your patient. We're now moving over to this poster, which is entitled Subluxation Degeneration. And it shows, I don't know if you can read it, but it's right here. It says near normal. Actually, let's jump down to here, because this is the one. It says near normal down below, up. And then here it goes into a phase 1. Right here, it says phase 1. Phase 2 is right in the third picture, phase 3. And then the final one, which Carla's standing in the way of, says fusion. So when you get this poster, you'll be able to follow along exactly. Now, most of the chiropractic posters out there that show the process of subluxation degeneration are going to have something really similar or close to this. So if you have a different poster already, that's fine. You can just adjust the terms that you use based on the labels that they use on that poster. But I want to show you how I go through this with a patient. And I'll use my mouse to show this. So here, and Carla's my patient. Let's just suppose that Carla's in a phase 2, meaning that she has subluxations that actually visibly show some signs of degeneration. And in that degeneration, it's so clear that she can see it as a layperson. Okay. So what I would say to Carla is, and I'm going to use my mouse, based on what we're seeing on your x-ray here, where there is some decay, where would you say, or what phase would you say that you are in terms of this subluxation degeneration poster? Now, I'm using the terms that I want her to sort of glue onto, because she's going to look over here and she's going to see, oh, there's some decay. And so she'll recognize, oh, whatever the changes are on the bones, that matches what I just saw in my x-rays a moment ago. And she'll say, oh, I think I'm in a phase 2. Now, if she says something different, if she guesses wrong and says, oh, I'm in a phase 1 or I'm in a phase 3, that's okay. And you can be complimentary about that. Say, actually, that's a great guess. However, and then I go back to the x-ray, based on the fact that we are seeing some decay here on the bone, where do you see that lining up with on this chart? Now, you're using the words right there. And it would be very easy for me to just say, well, actually, you're in phase 2 because it says some decay. But we're not doing that. We're using what's called a Socratic style of education. And Socratic education means that we're asking questions to make sure that our patient has a clear understanding of what's going on, right? So we want to ask these questions just to make sure that they're following along with us. Okay, so I'm going to continue on. So Carla says, oh, I'm in a phase 2. That's right. Now, and here's where I want to use my hands for a minute. I'm going to show you how this works. So we know that Carla has had, say, neck pain for 10 years. And that's because she shared that with us on our first visit. Based on that 10-year timeline, I'm going to use my hands. I would say, okay, now let's assume that because this neck pain started 10 years ago after the, fall on a trampoline, 10 years ago was the first time you experienced it. Now, given that it's been going on for 10 years and in 10 years' time, it's gone from normal to what phase? Carla says, a phase 2. That's right, it's a phase 2. So now, and I'm using my hands. So let me go back to show you my mouse, because this is really important that you use your hands in the same way, because this is going to go into future health projections, our topic for the week. So given that it started here at near normal, that was square one, or when it first started 10 years ago, and now you're in a phase 2 after 10 years. And I'm using my hands. If you look at me on the camera, I'm using my hands just like this. So you started here 10 years ago. Now you're here 10 years later. You're in a phase 2. I'm going to use my hands now to delineate the same distance of time to project to the future. Okay, the same distance of time. So if I said, here you were in a phase when it started 10 years ago, and here you are now 10 years later, what does that say? Where does that say you'll be 10 years from now? And I'm going to use the same distance with my hands. Okay, so let me stop the share, because you really want to get this dialed in so that they answer your questions appropriately. I know, for many of us, we're busy in practice. We probably have another report of findings right after this one. We got to stay within certain timeframes based on our appointments. So we don't want to get too far off point. We certainly don't want to confuse the patient as far as what the ideas that or the concepts that we're conveying. So here you were 10 years ago. Now you're here 10 years later, you're in a phase 2. Now, what if this goes on for another 10 years from now? Okay, you see how my hands are doing that? Now there's a pause though. So, and let me go through this with you. I'm going to come back to it in a minute, so we'll recap, but I'm going to show you the script in a minute that follows this pattern. So 10 years ago, you didn't have headaches. 10 years later, here you are now, you're in a phase 2. Now in a phase 2, based on your condition, the subluxation with degeneration, you've had headaches. You've had those headaches almost every day. You've been taking 2 or 3 Tylenol every day to deal with the headaches. You've had concentration problems. When you're at work, it's difficult to concentrate. When you're at home, you don't feel like playing with your kids or spending time with your family because you're in so much pain. And that happens 2 or 3 days a week. In addition to that, at night, you've been waking up with headaches, so it's disrupting your sleep. When we did your exam, we actually found that your mobility in your cervical spine or your neck was limited by 50% in 3 out of 6 planes. Half of your ability to move has been restricted by half or 50%. Crazy. Then we took the x-rays. On the x-rays, we saw that the discs have degenerated. They've actually broken down and there's bone spurs starting to form. Now, that's where you are after 10 years. Okay, now, outside the script, I want to just emphasize this because what you're doing is you're literally just sharing the information that they shared with you. But I want you to think back to when they first came in. When they first came in, they probably walked through your door and you said, how, in so many words, how can we help you? And they said, I have headaches. And I heard my friend referred me in. I heard you can adjust my neck and my headaches will go away. That was it. That's what you got. Now, from that, what you turn that into based on asking the right questions, doing a detailed consultation, digging in and finding out more details about how this person has been affected by this condition, you took that, I've had headaches for 10 years, and you extrapolated it into this full picture of the condition, the details of the examination and what that showed, and how it's affecting this person. That's right where you stop halfway, okay? So, Carly, you came in with this condition 10 years ago. Here's where you are now. Let me just recap what you've shared with us so far. And you go through all of these details. Then, after you've done that, now we're going to project to the future. And that's why this section is called Future Health Projection. So we're going to project to the future by saying, based on all of that, Carla, if this was to go on for another 10 years, the same time frame that you've had it, this went on for another 10 years, then how would it be affecting you? Now, I paused intentionally because when you ask that question after going through and repeating all those things, the next person that speaks has to be the patient. Okay, now what you're going to find, and I just saw this yesterday in my office, I was meeting with a husband and wife. The wife is the patient, and actually the husband's a patient too. He referred his wife, but his wife, when I went through that part and I stopped, she literally got emotional and broke down in tears. Now, that's not what our intention is at all. We're not trying to make somebody cry. That's not it at all. But what happened was she realized just how much of an impact this condition was having on her life. And it was impacting her in many ways that were significant. And the reason why she got emotional about it was just realizing, my gosh, I never knew how much this was affecting me. And what is that going to do about her value in terms of taking care of it? Obviously, it's going to elevate it. Okay, now this is through the whole report of findings process. Like I said, this is a critical point because we're really putting everything out there and really asking our patient to take a hard look at it and say, are you okay with your life being affected in this way? Now, I'm being a little extreme with this certain example to illustrate a point. It could be somebody, because I had another report of findings yesterday, my CA did that one, but it was a teenager and she's not really that affected. She's, she hurts. I had to write her a note for school so she didn't have to participate in PE because it was hurting her to play basketball. But other than that, outside of being out on the court and playing basketball, she's really not in that much pain. So I'll give you the solution to that example too. But the reason why I gave you that example though is because I'm not over dramatizing or certainly not exaggerating anything by sharing these details back with the patient at this moment. What I'm doing is I'm just simply repeating what they told us. Then we're going to project to the future. And that future projection is in the future, if this continues for the same time frame moving forward, how will this affect you in the future? Now, I'll play both of those. So in the more advanced, severe example I told you, obviously, I'm going to be quiet for a second. And the woman yesterday was emotional and broke down in tears, just thinking about, oh my gosh, 10 more years of this, I can't even imagine where I'll be. It will be horrible. Take another situation with a teenager who just needs a note for school and it hurts her when she plays basketball. How would I phrase that? What I would say is projecting forward, and for this girl, it wasn't 10 years, it's actually only been 6 months. And trust me, in the consultation, which we covered last module, we did dig for chronicity. What that means is we did ask her if it had ever shown up before 6 months ago. And, did she ever experience this in the past? Nope. So it wasn't there longer than 6 months. But what I said was projecting forward 6 months, how is this going to affect you through the summer And how would this affect you in terms of restarting basketball next semester? Right? So I'm projecting to the future and thinking further. As you grow, you want to grow up and be a healthy, active, vibrant woman. And now you're a teenager. So if you continue to grow with this condition, if you're growing, what's the condition doing? It's growing too. So as it grows, are these problems going to become smaller or are they going to become bigger? And if they become bigger as an adult, how is that going to affect you? Right? Now I know it because I have two teenage sons. Well, actually, one's now in his 20s, but I have two children. And I know as a teenager, you feel like, hey, I've got the whole world in front of me. Nothing can stop me now. I'm capable of anything. So it's kind of hard sometimes to really, for them to wrap their head around the fact that this could be a long-term consequence. And I understand that. But it's our job as a doctor or as a CA who is an extension of the doctor to put things in perspective based on our experience, right? Based on the experience that we know from our training and the experience that we see in other patients who either take care of the condition or don't. This is the time to share that experience and then project to the future based on our knowledge about this condition, right? So this is where we really have to make sure we project to the future and let them know what we've seen in other patients or ask them questions to get their impression of how it would be. I'm just pausing there to kind of slow down for a second because in the case of the teenager yesterday, when I projected, my CA, we talked about it afterwards, but when we project to the future, for her, it was like, how is this going to affect you in the future? And she goes, oh, I don't know. Right. Which is okay. That's fine. She doesn't have the knowledge that we have. So then what your response would be is, well, this is what I've seen in other patients who've let this run its course, who were also teenagers, and just share the examples, let them know. And also talk about areas that are important to them. How is this going to look? How are your friends going to feel if this condition worsens and you may not be able to play basketball? Or how is this going to affect your posture? Or how is this going to affect your ability to stay active with the things that you love to do down the road? So you're projecting to the future in that way, just to let them know this is what I've seen in the future happen to other patients. Okay, so let's go back to our screen and go through that. And at any time, if you have any questions, please just raise your hand, let me know. I'll be happy to open up the line and answer any questions. Okay, so here we go. Now, this is about responsibility, and it was perfect that I gave you those two very different examples of different patients. But the bottom line in either one of those examples is the patient must, and I'm reading from the screen, the patient must take responsibility or the condition will deteriorate and their quality of life will decline. And we know that based on the facts and the anatomy of how a subluxation affects the spine, right? So if we're irresponsible about it, obviously it's not going to get better on its own. Now, you can also use examples at this point as well. One example might be in terms of cavities in your teeth, right? Most people understand the value of taking care of their teeth on both a regular maintenance basis, brushing and flossing, and on a preventative basis, seeing a dentist a couple times a year, right? If we don't do either one of those things, we're being irresponsible about our teeth. And what will happen to the condition of our teeth? They will decline. That's right. Now, if we are irresponsible in terms of maintaining a healthy spine and taking care of problems when they're small, rather than letting them get big, if we're responsible about doing that, if we're irresponsible about that, then what will happen to the condition in our spine? Well, it will get worse. See, you're using an example that the person understands and can relate to. You're comparing it to a new example and that they maybe are just learning about, but the answer to the question is the same answer as the question that they knew the answer to. So it's an easy response to go right to the same answer. It's a really important educational tool that we can use. So again, the patient must take responsibility or the condition will deteriorate and their quality of life will decline. So we're really putting that assertion into our conversation. So we now move into the demand for care. And I want to just open up my screen for a minute because I was just working with my new CA she's learning the report of findings. She's doing a great job. But there's 3 critical components to every report of findings that we all should master as doctors and CAs who are delivering reports of findings. 3 big topics. The first one is the push-off. And I shared that with you earlier in the series. That's done by the doctor. If the CA is doing the report of findings, I see Dr. Gabrielson's office on the line today. Welcome, by the way, Dr. Gabrielson and your team. I know that you have CAs who deliver the report of findings. So if I'm delivering the report of findings, then the push-off is done. I'm sorry, if I'm introducing for the report of findings, then the push-off is done by the doctor. I said that backwards. That's number one. Number two is the demand for care. That's what we're talking about right now. Now, if I have a CA that's delivering the report of findings, my CA is going to prompt the demand for care. And that comes about with a question, which I'll go back to that screen in a minute. That's number two. So push off, demand for care. And then the third part is the Clear 100. And the Clear 100 is really asking for a firm commitment, a 100% commitment to follow through with all the recommendations. If you get all three of those done and accomplished in any report of findings, check, 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 you will have amazing conversion rates. Not only that, but you'll have amazing follow-through, retention. Those three check boxes must be checked on every report of findings every single time by whoever is delivering the report of findings. Push off, the demand for care, and the Clear 100. Okay, so just remember those three steps, work with your team on it, and we'll go back to the screen here so we can fill in number two of the three, which is today's topic, which is the future health projections, which we are going to predict the future without correction. We're going to prompt the demand for care with a question, and the answer to the question is the patient should request the doctor's recommendations. So how does the question go? Question goes, now, based on understanding your condition and understanding the direction that it's heading without any chiropractic care, how do you feel about your condition and what would you like to do about it? How do you feel about your condition and what would you like to do about it? If we don't ever do that, we miss an important component of the doctor-patient relationship. And that component is a commitment on behalf of the patient to engage in care with you. I didn't say follow through because that comes up in the Clear 100. The push off at the beginning is more about setting the threshold of where you operate, doctors. You're not just going to give this a half-hearted effort. You're not going to just simply attempt to maybe help out this patient. You're giving it your all. That's the push off. The demand for care is saying, based on you understanding your condition, I need you, the patient, to tell me in your own words that you want me to help you. Okay. And that's what we're leading up to. And then the third one is the Clear 100. You're committing to follow through with the recommendations, which we'll get into that in another section. But this one here is really important. Okay. So I think I covered those three lines on the screen in detail. Once again, the demand for care is done by prompting with a question. The question being, now that you understand your condition, how do you feel about it? And what would you like to do about it? And the answer to that question, the patient should request the doctor's recommendations. I don't know, doctor, you tell me, what is it that you're recommending? I'd love to know how to take care of this. Or how do you feel about your condition and what do you want to do about it? Well, I'm curious what the doctor's recommending. I'm curious to know if I can be helped, okay? Or how this works. How do we take care of this, right? That's a demand for care. They're asking you to explain what it is that they're going to need to do in order to get the best results. So let's go on to the next one. Here's a special note, because at this point, before we move into the next section, which will be next week, I want to just pause for a minute and lay out a scenario. And I didn't have this happen yesterday. All of our reports of findings that were supposed to bring a spouse did bring their spouse, and we had 4 of them. So I just want to delineate that for a minute, because when you're doing this properly, when you're following the steps that I'm showing you, it's beautiful how the system just plays itself out there. Like you just watch things happen and you go, wow, this is so great. Because yesterday, as I said, we had 4 report of findings. All 4 of them, it just so happened, were supposed to bring a spouse, and they all did. So it was 100% of them brought their spouse with them, and 100% of them started care. and I went over that last week. In order for a patient to be considered a care plan start, in other words, they started their care plan, in order for that to happen, three things need to happen. Actually, I don't think that was last week, so I'll say it again. Three things need to happen in order for a report of findings to be called a start. They started care plan. They started the care plan. Number one, they need to get adjusted. Number two, they need to schedule all of their appointments for the whole care plan. And number three, they need to make their first payment. Okay, those three things. If those three things happen, then we say check the box. That's an ROF start. Now, I know in sales, sometimes they'll call it a close, right? You make a deal, you complete the sales, and then you close the client or you close the sale. I wasn't as comfortable with that term because in chiropractic, we're out to open things. We don't want things closed. That would be wrong, backwards, and against our principles. So I changed that to a starting care plan instead of a closed care plan or close the sale. Anyways, just a technical word that we use, but just wanted to explain that. So when you go through all these steps, it's so great to see how it just falls into place. Well, sometimes, as in the day before on Tuesday, I had a new patient return for her report of findings and she didn't bring her spouse. And so we're going to go through that now and talk about what happens when a patient doesn't bring their spouse. And this, in the process of the report of findings, this is the part where we have a little switch. We just follow it according to plan. We go through the sequence. We don't deviate unless they didn't bring their spouse, and then now we deviate. Okay. And I'll show you what that is in just a minute. Before I show you what the deviation is or the change is, I want to just emphasize that if you have a report of findings that comes back without their spouse and they have a spouse and they were supposed to be there, then you need to right away meet with your team. And what you're going to review with your team is your protocols. Your protocols being, did the doctor talk to the new patient at the new patient appointment about the importance of bringing their spouse? And did the doctor ask the three questions leading up to the patient agreeing to bring their spouse? Okay. Do you have a spouse? Are they aware of your condition? And wouldn't you agree they should be here when we go over the results so we can explain specific things they can help you with so you'll get better faster? It'll save you money. It'll save you time. You'll feel better sooner. These are all the reasons why your spouse needs to come. So that's number one. Did the doctor do that at the new patient appointment? Number two, did the doctor fill out the summary of charges, which is the form that goes to the front desk as like a baton pass that goes to the front desk that has the spouse's name written right on it, so that at the front desk, your CA can say, John, the doctor wants me to schedule this appointment with your spouse, Mary, and John says, oh, I don't think she can make it. Well, if there's nothing to fall back on, the CA is stuck and just basically has to say, oh, okay, John, no problem. But if it's written on the paper, then the CA says, well, actually, John, the doctor wrote down specifically that he talked to you and that Mary is supposed to come with you. I'm just here I'm the messenger. Don't kill the messenger. I'm just scheduling the appointment for two people, not one. That's it, right? So number two, did the doctor put the name of the spouse on the summary of charges? And then number three, when you do your confirmation for the appointment the day before or whenever that appointment is, the confirmation the day before, whether it's a text message or a voicemail or a phone call, was the appointment confirmed for two people, not one? Okay, so those are the three steps that you want to cover. Number one, did the doctor follow their script? Number two, did the front desk confirm the appointment for two people and put the spouse on the appointment card with the new patient? And number three, was the confirmation call made with both names? Okay, so those are the protocols that you would review with your team if the spouse didn't come to the report of findings with your patient. Now, you could go ahead and proceed, right? You can go through the whole report of findings, but where you're going to stop is you're not going to go over recommendations and you're not going to go over financial arrangements. Why? Because remember, you have to fulfill your promise. And what was your promise? Your promise was if your spouse comes with you, it could shorten how long it takes us to get you better because we're going to give you exercises to do at home that require assistance from your spouse. These are exercises you can't do on your own. You need help from somebody. And they were supposed to be here for us to show them how to help you. Okay. So you're fulfilling your promise. You're not you're not shortchanging. This is not a bait and switch. This is just consistent with what's going to happen. I'll give you an example. When I had my wisdom teeth pulled, this was when I was 19 years old. That was the last time I took any pharmaceutical products. I took 2 Advil after my wisdom teeth were pulled. That was the last medications I've ever taken since then. It's been 33 years. But when I went in for my wisdom teeth to have my wisdom teeth pulled, were they going to let me drive home by myself? Absolutely not, right? I had a general anesthetic. I was out. And when I came out of surgery, having my wisdom teeth out, they required that I had somebody to drive me home. Now, if I showed up at that appointment to have my wisdom teeth pulled and I didn't have somebody there with me to drive me home, would they have proceeded with the surgery? Absolutely not, because they weren't bluffing, were they? They were serious. We need you to have somebody here to drive you home, okay? So I'm using that as an example because this is one of those instances. If you are requiring that a spouse come with a patient to their report of findings so they can help them with exercises that are going to help them get better sooner, and the new patient comes in without that person, you have the authority to decide, am I going to proceed without, am I going to proceed with this person's care plan, or am I going to proceed without the spouse, right? What are you going to do? And you can decide that. Now, I've had patients that didn't come with the spouse, and I went ahead and went through the whole report of findings anyways, and that's okay. I want you to decide where your level of priority is on that. But I want to go back and give you the option to change things as you see fit. So this is where I'm going with on the screen. So you could perform the entire report of findings, and you could go through recommendations, you could go through financial arrangements, but what you're risking is you're risking retention. You're risking the fact that when they go home after maybe 5 or 10 adjustments, and they're feeling great and their symptoms are gone and they're at the dinner table, their spouse is going to say, why are you still going to the chiropractor? You're feeling great. You should just stop going, right? The spouse is not supporting the patient in terms of the recommendations and follow through. As opposed to if the spouse had come to the report of findings, they would be sitting at the dinner table 5 or 10 visits down the road, your patient's raving about how great they feel, and the spouse is understanding, oh yeah, I was there at the report of findings. Just remember, honey, just because you're feeling good, the doctor said you got to follow through or else you're going to be right back where you started, okay? The spouse is supporting them with the retention and follow through, okay? That's the difference. So given that scenario, you can decide, do you want to just let them off the hook? That's kind of a little extreme to say that, so I apologize to any patients that are listening. Do you want to let them slide and maybe miss out on the big picture results? Or do you want to hold your ground? Well, if you choose to hold your ground, that's what's on the screen. So if you choose to hold your ground, we still want to help this person. That's the priority. You would perform the entire report of findings. You would adjust them and schedule another report of findings. And at the other report of findings, you're going to schedule it with the spouse so that you can get everything done. So you would go right up to this point and then you would stop before recommendations and before financial arrangements. Now, what's going to happen? Patient's going to say, well, why don't you tell me what it's going to take? Well, we were going to do that, but your spouse isn't here. And what we were going to explain in terms of our recommendations included participation from your spouse so that you could get better faster. They're not here. I can't show them how to do it. So we'll have to reschedule for another time. Well, I want to know how much it's going to cost. Well, obviously, if your spouse isn't here to help you, then we are going to have to do more here. It's going to take longer, so it's going to cost you more. So if you want us to go over that cost, we can tell you that figure, but you don't want to know how it's going to cost you more. I mean, that's a bigger number. You're going to pay more money. It's really not relevant if we actually have a shorter solution that's going to get you better faster, and it's going to require less of our time because you're going to be doing some of it on your own. So then the other one that's come up. Well, can't you just show me in a video? Or can't you just explain it to me and then I'll explain it to them? Actually, the reason why I asked them to be here is because I want I'm going to show them specific places to do the stretches and help you with at home. It's not something I can show in a video. They're going to have to experience it. You're going to have to experience it so you know what it feels like. And then and only then can I then have them do that for you at home. So it requires specific instruction. And again, going back to that wisdom teeth analogy, if you walked in for that appointment to have your wisdom teeth pulled and you said, it's okay, I'm going to take an Uber home. What are they going to say? No, we're liable. We asked you to bring someone to drive you home. You didn't do it. We're going to reschedule the surgery, right? So it's that kind of parameter. Okay, let's keep going. and I'll kind of wrap up here because, as I said, this is a little shorter topic, but very important. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. There is one more piece. Pre-ROF appointments until the spouse attends. So what that means is, let's just suppose that the patient came without their spouse and you want to go ahead and get them adjusted. You didn't go over the recommendations. You didn't go over the financial arrangements, but the spouse can't come for a week because they're out of town or they work a lot. Okay, well, we don't want to hold off on taking care of the patient, right? We want to jump in and get going and present them with the best results, right? So we can do pre-ROF appointments, which means actually, I have to sidebar for just a second. In the sample of recommendations that I gave you, the sample says we would see them each day for the first week. Now, if you think that's over adjusting, go back and look at BJ Palmer's recommendations. He would see a patient each day for the first 4 months of their care. So seeing someone for the first week or 2 or even 3 on a daily basis is not over adjusting, as long as you palpate first and make sure there's something there that's a subluxation and needs an adjustment. Obviously, if you palpate someone and they don't need an adjustment, you're not going to do it. But if they do need an adjustment, it's perfectly okay to see someone more frequently like that in the beginning. So in my example, I said we're going to see them each day for the first week, and I may want to continue to do that, right? So if I adjust them today at the report of findings, then I could schedule them each day, and they would just pay for each of those visits on a per visit basis, leading up to the report of findings that their spouse will now be able to attend because we scheduled it a few days out. Okay, so pre-ROF appointments until the spouse attends, then you do a new report of findings with the spouse, and away we go. I want to just add one more really great part of this, because when you have CAs on your team that can do reports of findings, I'll tell you that what happens, and this happens in my office all the time. We'll have somebody come. We have specific time frames for report of findings, and let's just suppose yesterday, Wednesday, they're from 9:45 until 11:30. Okay, so that's when we do our report of findings and care plan renewal appointments. During that time, a new patient comes in for their report of findings. Their spouse couldn't make it. Maybe it was because they were at work. Now, they're telling us, my spouse can't come at 10:30 in the morning. They're at work all day. That's okay. What time do they get off of work? Oh, they get off at 5. Okay, great. We're going to make an exception for you. We'll schedule your next appointment for a report of findings at 5:15. But guess what? Because I'm adjusting during that time, I can't do that report of findings as the doctor. I'm going to be seeing patients, and we're not going to reschedule all of those patients just for this one report of findings. But because I have CAs that can do report of findings, and during that time, they would have been seeing new patients, we can carve out the new patient appointments a little bit to create space to have a CA deliver that report of findings during our adjusting times. So we have that kind of flexibility, and we tend not to book those appointments for report of findings for the reason that when we have someone whose spouse just cannot make it at any other time, we'll put a report of findings in at that time with the spouse. And we let the patient know, we're making an exception for you. It's really important that your spouse comes. We're going to schedule it outside of our standard times for you, but that's just because of the extent of your condition. And we really feel strongly that you need this and your spouse needs to be here. And you'll see a much higher level of value based on that explanation. Okay, so we've covered a lot there. And that's how that works. Okay, so pre-ROF appointments until the spouse attends. And from there, we went into practicing, which this is a perfect time to jump over to the site. And here we go. Let me share the screen with you and just show you. So here is our topics for the week. Here is our script. And I'm just going to read through this as we finish up. This is a good time, though, to ask if you have any questions. If you do, raise your hand. I'll open up your line. I'm going to go through this script in the meantime. So, and you have this in your materials. So the doctor says, or CA, if the CA is doing the report of findings, at your last visit, you shared your health concerns and how they've affected you at home, at work, and with your hobbies for the past 10 years. Now, that's obviously paraphrased. If you look at footnote 1, completely list all primary concerns, effects on lifestyle, homework and hobbies, exam findings, x-ray or scan results, medications, etc. So we listed everything in that first part, right? Obviously, I abbreviated here in the interest of time and paper space, but all of that just got stated. Yes, that's correct. I hadn't realized there was so many things wrong. Well, during your exam, we discovered your flexibility has been reduced by 25 to 50%. In other words, you've been getting stiffer by the day. That's right. I hadn't noticed that my spine has become so inflexible. So the patient's realizing, wow, that's been really bad. Your x-rays showed advanced degeneration at multiple levels of your spine. Plus, there are bones and discs that are beginning to fuse together. Patient, I was surprised to see how advanced they were. Now I'm worried. You also explained, this is to the patient, you also explained how you've been taking medications on a regular basis to cope with these problems. Yes, I have. I've actually started getting problems in my stomach as a side effect of taking so many medications. Well, the doctor, that's if a CA is doing the report of findings. If not, doctors, you would just say, I'm very concerned about you. If you had to live with the same condition for another 10 years, how would your life be affected? I can't even imagine that. I would probably be disabled or incapacitated. Well, then I have a question for you. How do you feel about your condition, and what would you like to do about it? Now, remember, folks, this is what we just talked about, right? This is footnote number 2. Prompt a demand for care by asking the patient this question. Okay, so we just asked that question. Well, I want to know what the doctor recommends, and I also want to know what I can do to take care of these subluxations as soon as possible. Well, if I were you, I would too. So let me explain the recommendations in order for the doctor to accept you as a patient. Okay, so we use the push-off to improve adherence and follow-through of recommended visits. Okay, so that's that script. And now you have that in your materials. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap. All right, so I'll go ahead and wrap up. But to everybody, happy Father's Day coming up this weekend, and thank you so much for being a part of DC trainings. And for everybody, if you have an interest in scheduling a consultation call with me, you can do it through the website. We can have a one-on-one. If it's something that's a little more private topic based, we can do that together. I'm always here for you. Anything we can do, as I started today with making BJ and Dee Dee proud and carrying on the profession, carrying the torch, and really carrying the legacy of chiropractic. I think I speak for all of us when I say chiropractic is at the top of the top shelf of healthcare in terms of the results we get and the lives that we impact. And so thank you for being a part of DC Trainings. Have a great week, and I will talk to you next week.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.